And there were conferences she had to attend because she was supervising some other teachers. She once went to one in California. And at that California conference, she was alone. My stepdad wasn't there with her. He was here in Tucson. And she goes to a restaurant in the hotel, and they serve alcohol there. And she notices somebody who's very intoxicated, who's kind of watching over her and looking at her. And so she then goes back to her room, an interior hallway. And the person begins following her to her room, so she runs and locks the door behind her. And so what did my mom do? Well, she didn't do what she should do. She should call 911 and the front desk immediately. But when people are hysterical, they don't always do the logical thing. Their hysteria overrides, some of their natural abilities to reason and think about the right way to act. So what did she do? She called my stepfather here in Tucson, and he said, "Hang up and call 911 right now." And of course, that's what she did. And I told her to call her guest too. But that was kind of irrational. My mom tells that story to this day. Is that that's how people think. They don't think rationally when they have a crisis like this. And another one was that I had an uncle who was driving on the New Jersey Turnpike, and his car caught on fire. And what did he do? He did the absolute worst thing he could have possibly done. He drove straight into a gas station on fire. What should he have done? He should have parked it on the interstate and ran from the car. Just in case it exploded or something. But, in a crisis, each of us acts differently. There are some of us who have training in emergency medical reception. I spent some years at the Sheriff's Department. I have a little bit more of a background in dealing with horrific crises, but a lot of people don't. And even though Samantha had majored in early childhood development and education, even though she had a lot of experience dealing with children, she's not an emergency responder. And in that moment of time, she was thinking to herself, I'm thinking for her up here, that I got to talk to my husband. My neighbor's a firefighter. He can help. And of course she should have called 911 first. And of course, not sure it would have made a heck of a lot of difference over that 15 to 18-minute period that she didn't do it, but maybe it would have. And as I told you earlier last week, every day, every hour of every day, she blames herself for what happened here. What could she have done differently? What could she have done that would have kept this young girl from suffering these awful, awful, awful consequences? So as I said, 7:45 has to be the time when the incident occurred. And then we get this rash of 17 phone calls over an 18-minute period. If that doesn't show panic. Here's some things I want you to consider. This came from one of you. That solid line of burn. That does not indicate somebody who's struggling. That does not indicate, when you talk about splash marks on the face, there's one on the chin, nothing else. There are no splash marks on Samantha there. Why not? Well, maybe she wasn't in the room, and maybe there wasn't a struggle, and maybe she wasn't holding her down. That is something to consider very seriously, because why would that line be so perfect? If there was a struggle, you might have little places on that line where instead of it being just a mark, all burned, third degree, below that, nothing above it, you might have little variations from the struggle where some of the burns are a little higher, some are not, and then you have splash burns on the neck, maybe more on the face other than one on the chin, maybe on the shoulders, maybe other places there would be splash marks. So consider also Samantha, none. And this just occurred to me when the doctors were testifying. They said that they gave her sedatives so that she wouldn't remember anything. I don't know how those sedatives affect the memory of this event or not, but you heard me questioning her, and she basically said, your collective memory is better than my individual memory, but she basically said, Mommy wasn't in the room. Mommy left to check on. And, in the confusion of all of this, could she have confused the fact that pulling her out of the tub was the holding her down part? Who knows? I wasn't there, you weren't there, Mr. Goodwin wasn't there, Ms. Osbacher wasn't there, none of you were there. The fact is that we have to consider all of the evidence in its totality and try to figure out, piece together, what it was that happened. Dr. Jane said, many head injuries do not show up in a CAT scan. Could she have been unconscious? Dr. Jane said, yes. That could also explain the injuries. We'll rule out loss of consciousness. Well, what's that? Bit, lip, and breathing tell us. Does it tell us she hit her head on the tub? Does it tell us she... I don't know what it tells us, but the doctors can't tell us what it tells us, but it shows that she received some kind of injury to the tooth, bit her lip, or hit her lip against her teeth on one of the surfaces in the bathroom. So I don't know what it means, but it means something. And think about this. The prosecutor's going to tell you again, I know he did. We don't have to prove a motive. Why would this woman do this? Why? She's been a caregiver and a loving parent her whole life. She's cared for children lovingly. She went out of the way to foster children from DCS and juvenile court. She fosters and loves her and treats her like her own child and then adopts her. And you heard that she knew that the child had had some previous problems in life, and that didn't matter. They loved her just the same and adopted her just the same as their own biological children and treated her no different. Why would somebody at the age of 28 just snap and do something as odious as this? Just burn somebody like this? I don't think so. I don't think that happens, and I think you will agree with me that it doesn't happen. Well, there are a few other things I'd like to ask you to consider. As I indicated, the instructions that the prosecutor went over. He went over only the knowing and intentional ones. You're going to get instructions on all those other things, as I said, in the degrees of murder of mindsets. But the last one is the one that I think applies here, and that is the civil negligence instruction, which you're not going to hear, but that's what happens when an accident happens. Negligence is a failure to use reasonable care. Negligence may consist of action or inaction. Inaction, not going in there sooner, protecting the safety of food. Negligence is the failure to act as a reasonably careful person would under circumstances. So I'd like you to consider that as you ponder what the verdict is going to be in this case. I want to cover a few other facts that came out late in the case. One of them was, I think Mrs. Osbacher mentioned something about how she wasn't speaking or didn't speak to her mother. Well, she didn't speak to the deputies when they arrived. She didn't speak to the emergency responders who took her to the hospital. She didn't speak to them. She began to cry after on the ride. She didn't speak to them and talk to the firefighters and EMTs. And when she got to the hospital, she didn't speak at all to the medical providers at the hospital. So it's no surprise if she didn't speak to any of those people, why she didn't speak to her mother when her mother pulls her out of that bathtub. And I ask you also to consider that, they want to treat this as if it's some clean, wonderful crime scene that is just, everybody's protected. But you heard lots of people who actually came into that before the warrant was served and the evidence was collected. So, and Samantha testified that there was pieces of skin everywhere. At one point in time, it was stuck to her shoe. It was on her. When she removed her from the tub, pieces of skin were falling off, landing on the toilet, landing on the toilet lid, landing some of it in the tub itself, some of it on the countertop near the toothbrush. But this skin was everywhere. And we would expect that with this kind of a burn, because you could already see from the photographs, as prolific as they were, that we were already down to the dermis before she left the house. Basically, the epidermis, the skin, was really pretty much already gone. And you heard Samantha testifying about how she was picking it up and the clumps were falling off. So when you think about all of this, think about all the people who were in the house that night. And also think about when Dr. Vera Creasy talked about that person who came in with almost 100% burns. He didn't say everybody arrives that way. He said they may be cognizant and totally aware. And he described the one person that he had 100% brain that was. But he didn't say everybody who does that is like that. And certainly in this case, for whatever reason, she was not like that. And we talk about the wet pink towel. Well, the towel, her regular towel, was still hanging in the room because her mom hadn't had a chance to get it like she normally would have after she turned the water off and would collect the towel like she did with the boys' towels. So consider that fact as well. And consider that we don't have to prove her innocence. This is a case where they have to prove, not by civil burdens, but by beyond a reasonable doubt. And that is this instruction here, which the judge is also given. And you also didn't get instructions before the commission that was suggested by Judge Goodwin. They read you, in the beginnings of our careers, they would read you the instructions that you were expected to remember, or they might send one copy. But you didn't get your own copy of the instruction for the process. And I won't read all of this, but on the end down here it says, if you think that there's a real possibility that there's not guilty, you must give me the benefit of the doubt, find that her, in this case, not guilty. So, finally leave you with this. We live in a country right now where a lot of us are a little bit concerned about our institutions, government, and I ask you to consider something that in this country, the jury system is a bulwark of our justice system. You can't tear that down. You can't overturn jury verdicts. You are the last arbiters of guilt or innocence in this case. You are the people who can make a decision. And, tomorrow, I've got a conference in a case at 9 o'clock. Judge probably has a full 9 o'clock calendar. I'm sure both these prosecutors will be in courtrooms for their 9 o'clock calendars. And the detective will move on to investigate other cases. We all will move on with our lives. But what you do here today with Samantha's case will be with her for the rest of her life. Just as these injuries and this horrific injury to her daughter is now with her for the rest of her life. So, thank you very much for your patience. Thanks for listening to us. Going on and on and on. I hope that this is an experience that won't give you nightmares and won't affect you forever. That maybe those photographs have wake me up. And I've been doing this a long time and had some awful homicides. But thank you very much. And at the end of your deliberations, we believe we will find that the defendant, Samantha Osteraas, is not guilty of any of the charges.
Thank you, Counsel. Mr. Goodwin.
Mr. Rogers told you that would not have been burned. None of us would be here. After she had done that, maybe call 911 immediately so that would get immediate care, not care sometime later, several hours, many hours later. The timeline that he went through with you up here, after 3 or 3:15, that timeline is entirely based upon Samantha Osteraas. Entirely. And consider how when she's remembering what seems like a pretty regular day, she's got great details. She remembers what she made for breakfast. She remembers that it was tomato soup and grilled cheese for lunch. She remembers all the details of what sound like a very regular sort of day, where her husband leaves at the same time, the kids come over at the same time, they get picked up at the same time. But then when she starts getting pressed on the details of what happened, why she didn't call 911, what was going on there, I was in shock. I was in shock I was in shock. I was